Well, good afternoon. It's Justice for All, and I'm George Yates, and it's another beautiful sunny day out there. It's about time, and we're going to be here with the next couple of hours here on my show. And, Justice for All is a show that's been on the air here now for almost a year, and we interview guests every week, and usually in the areas of the law. Today I think we're going to, at least at the very beginning, our guest, we're going to have to ask him what his Super Bowl pick is, but because I don't think anybody can really go into this weekend without thinking about the Super Bowl, the big game coming up. I was looking at the paper today, and it's all about the Super Bowl. And our guest today is a retired judge from New York State. Really an interesting guy. His name is Peter Leavitt, the Honorable Peter M. Leavitt, and we're really excited to have him on the show today. He was a DA in Brooklyn for 3 years. He was a DA up in Westchester County for 3 years. He was a very successful real estate attorney, stand-up comic, and then a town court judge and a superior court judge and an acting Supreme Court judge for the state of New York. So he's really got a brilliant, successful career. He's now retired in Boynton Beach, Florida. And he's written a great book here, which I've had a chance to read. It's called From the Other Side of the Bench. And it's a book by Honorable Peter M. Leavitt, and he's with us today. How are you doing, Judge?
Good afternoon, George. Doing fine, thank you.
So thanks for joining us today. And, of course, Dee and I both want to know here, who you picking for the Super Bowl tomorrow?
Well, New England, I don't have a choice. I had to do that.
I thought maybe you're such a diehard Giants fan or something that you have to root against the Patriots. You never know.
No, can't do that.
Well, Dee here is an Indianapolis Colts fan, and he's still upset about Deflategate. So he's going to have to pull for the Seahawks.
Do you find it true? Do you give that any credibility? The locker room attendant deflating the balls? I really don't. But that's only from the point of view of a former judge.
Yeah, I was about to say, you got a little bit of cynicism there, don't you? You've heard enough stories. You never really know, do you?
Absolutely. But you've read my book, so you know that's true.
Well, I did read your book, and it's really fascinating. I guess there's a lot of things that are in there I'd like to get to, but I have a question for you. I have had a wonderful opportunity to interview folks that have written books about judges. Joel Cohen wrote a great book that I interviewed him called not the Other Side of the Bench. It was called Blindfolds Off. And so he interviewed 13 federal judges about their perspectives in deciding cases. I also had the pleasure of seeing one of my first lawyers that worked for me years ago. His name is Joseph Migliozzi, and he was recently elevated to the circuit court bench here in Norfolk last December. And he gave a wonderful speech, and he said that being a judge is lonely, and because once you leave your home in the morning, you're a judge, and you have to uphold the standards of being a judge, and you can't really be yourself again till you pull in your driveway at night. And he loves being a judge. He loves being addressed as judge. And I guess you're going to be addressed as judge forever. But how do you feel about that? Did you find being a judge for 18 years, did you find that being lonely?
Well, there are aspects that's very true, that were very lonely. For instance, the first year I was on the bench, I would go out for lunch, and every time you'd walk in a restaurant, it was every table virtually, because there were so many lawyers there at the same time. Hi, Judge, how are you? Hey, Judge, how are you feeling? And, after a while, you just didn't want that. You just wanted to go and relax for lunch, not have to have a bunch of conversations. So the administrative judge in my county, I don't know at whose expense, probably the taxpayers, had a lunchroom built, and we used to sit and talk amongst ourselves. It can be, I hate the expression, lonely at the top, but it was kind of lonely when you're the guy that's making the kind of decisions that we made on a daily basis. Yeah, it's lonely.
Yeah, because you even make a comment in your book. If you have lunch with a lawyer, you right in the middle of the lunch, you'll say separate checks really loudly, just to let everybody know that you're not being coerced or whatever it is, bought off or bribed or whatever. It seems like you're perhaps constantly always worried about the fact that somebody might be currying favor with you.
Well, that's true. And by the way, that's in the rules and ethics in New York State. That is a fact. When you walk into the restaurant, you announce, it says it clearly, in a loud voice, separate checks, please. So somebody at another table who sees you with an attorney who happens to appear before you every once in a while doesn't think he's buying me lunch. It's kind of a silly rule, but that's what you did. You did the same thing everywhere. And when you go to ethics classes, and we went to school every summer, a judge's school, there'd always be judges that would ask these questions that if you don't want to know the answer, don't ask the question. But there were judges that would say, can I still pass the collection plate? Well, are there attorneys in your congregation? Yes, well, then you can't, because just you holding a collection plate might cause him to want to make a larger donation. It gets to the absurd at a certain point where you really can't be yourself. You said you can only be yourself when you got home at night. That's really true. Always had to be cautious, always had to be careful.
Well, your book is called The Other Side of the Bench, and it's available, I guess, on Amazon, or where do people get a copy of it?
It's on Amazon. There's a website called From the Other Side of the Bench. Go on that. It's available on Kindle. And thanks for the plug, George. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, of course, I'm trying to sell you some books here, Judge.
Thank you.
Well, you have a really interesting career, and I'm just going to briefly go through it, and I'd like you to comment perhaps as we go. But you start out, your father was a lawyer.
Yes.
You've got a very interesting, wonderful home life growing up, a very involved mother and father, and you know, a young Jewish boy growing up in Brooklyn. And you have some interesting stories about your family and the Holocaust and all of that. How do you find that growing up Jewish and with the history of the Holocaust in your family, I think on your mother's side, how do you think that affected you when you were making decisions from the bench later on in life?
Well, I think I can't carry it that far in one sentence. So let me start in the beginning by saying that we were cautioned, my older brother, my younger sister, and I, by my father, to be very careful when we were out with people we didn't know who perhaps did or did not know that we were Jewish. Be careful what we had to say. And my first experience in the fourth grade was I came home with a bloody nose, and my mom and dad said, "What happened?" I said, "This kid called me a dirty Jew, and I don't know why. What did I do? I didn't think I was that dirty." And at first, my mother made a joke of it and said, "Well, let's go clean you up, and then you won't be dirty anymore." But the caution started very early after the war. No one knew when or where we would be safe or not safe. That's the shadow you grow up with. I think where it helped me on the bench was my understanding people of color, people of different religions, understanding the difficulties that they went through in their growing up and in their lives. So I think that probably helped me to be much more, I'll call it empathetic or sympathetic or just plain understanding.
Well, that seems to permeate your philosophy from the bench. You rail against big corporate interests and how they can sometimes overwhelm a good case. You talk about the power of the media to really to influence the public opinion when perhaps it shouldn't be. You have you call yourself a bit of a Don Quixote, tilting at windmills. So you have a very healthy disrespect for power and you're all the way through your book, don't you?
Well, thank you, George. You couldn't have said anything nicer about me. Yes. The answer is that I rail against a lot of things, particularly, present company accepted, the media, who so twists and so slants and so misstates things that it becomes difficult for a judge. And having been attacked in the media so many times for things that I did and did not say, they don't care whichever side you're on. I just have no respect left for the media. But then again, I've attacked them when I could, but I'm not allowed to. Judges, as you know, cannot comment on any case until final appeal. I had to wait over a decade to write my book, so I could talk about some of the cases that I tried. So I could comment on the former district attorney of Westchester County, and I know you read in the book that there's no love lost between Janine and myself, and
no.
Frankly, there are good reasons for that. One of them is in the book. You read about that, the threat of my life. So,
right.
Yeah, I reel against everybody.
Yeah.
But I'm not an angry person.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you and your personal life. You grew up in Brooklyn, and then you went to law school. You went to NYU, where you down in Washington Square in New York City, a great area of the world, where you say you weren't stoned all the time while you were in college.
How did I know you'd pick that out of the book?
Oh, I had to. Sorry.
I was there hippie time, and yeah, we partied a lot.
And does that also? I mean, the fact that you weren't stoned all the time, did that help you later on in life when you were trying to make the determination of how to sentence somebody that's coming before you on a small amount of marijuana, or maybe somebody else that might be under the influence of drugs or alcohol?
George, the comment was tongue-in-cheek. I was just saying that, yes, I was in Greenwich Village, and yes, I was subjected to the drug culture, subjected to or involved in and witnessed it. Didn't mean I was part of it. Let's be careful about that.
Okay. So now we're getting a little deniability here, Judge. Okay.
Not a lot.
All right.
Just a little.
Well, listen, so you went to Fordham Law School at night.
Yes, it was my dad's school, and I was at a period of my time in my life that I was completely independent, or tried to be, and said, no, I'll work my way through law school at night. So I had 3 jobs during the day, worked as a waiter in the Borscht Belt during the summers, and paid my own way through the first 2 years of school, when I gave up and Dad helped after that.
So he picked up the tab on the 3rd year?
And 4th, yes.
So that when you do night school, it's a 4-year thing.
4 years for law school. And at that time, the degree that I earned was Doctor of Law. They've subsequently now changed the curriculum. It's called JD, as you know.
Right. Well, now, Fordham's a great school, isn't it? It's got a great tradition.
Absolutely.
And so when you got out of law school, now you worked at Goldman Sachs. Now, was that before law school or after?
No, that was during. And I hated it. It wasn't for me. Business world was not where I wanted to be. But you mentioned Fordham. Just as an aside, I was at the reunion this past week, and they have put my book in the Fordham Law School library. Very happy about that.
Well, anytime you get a book written by a judge, it is a unique perspective, and not enough judges write books, I don't think. Don't you feel that? I mean, there's very few. That's why when I did interview Joel Cohen about this, it's called Blindfolds Off. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it or have heard of it, but Joel's a top-notch white-collar litigator in the city, and he interviewed these 13 federal judges. And the whole perspective on the book was, to what extent does a judge's prior experiences color their judgment on the bench? We have this notion that judges are going to be these neutral decision makers, but you can't escape your past when you're making decisions on the bench, can you?
It certainly can't escape, George. And before I make the next comment to answer your question, I will confess that this sounds somewhat egomaniacal, but I think I had bred a preparation, and I'll tell you why. I had 6 years as a prosecutor, 3 years in Brooklyn, New York, where I learned everything, 3 years in Westchester, where the greater concentration of my cases were white-collar. Then I had 17 years as a defense attorney, and then I had 18 years as a town judge, as a lower court judge, county court judge, and acting Supreme Court justice. But that's not really my whole background. The background that I really wanted to add to that was I was a volunteer in the Newcastle Volunteer Fire Department. I did that for 10 years and worked my way up and retired as captain of my company. And I was also, after that, because I was injured in a house fire, and my daughters felt I shouldn't do that anymore, I was a volunteer with the Chappaqua Volunteer Ambulance Corps, certified 3 times as an EMT, and I did that for 10 years. Now, why do I tell you that? Because I have seen more people in stress. I have seen more victims of crime and injuries than any other judges that I know. So when I got a case, an assault case, a robbery case with injuries, a more serious case, I've heard these victims screaming in emergency rooms who have been shot or stabbed. I've been there. I've seen that. It just made me a different kind of a person. And I implore judges to spend some time before you take the bench in criminal matters. Go to an emergency room. Spend a few hours. See what victims are really like, because the cut and dry black and white, well, I'm a judge now and I know everything, it stinks. It really doesn't give you the background you need. That's a very long answer to your question, but that's my answer.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that. I was impressed with and these were volunteer jobs. This fire department job was a volunteer job. These were non-paying jobs, right? With both the fire department for 10 years as well as the EMT for 10 years?
That's correct. They were volunteer.
And we have an all-volunteer rescue squad in Virginia Beach, very well run, very well organized, very well thought of, one of the top ones in the country probably, and it's all volunteer. So that's an impressive resume to do that. What made you, I mean, you're obviously somebody that wants to give back to the community by doing that. What is it about you and your, let's say, upbringing that made you want to be a volunteer in such dangerous occupations and time-consuming as well?
My mother. From the time we were old enough to reach the top of the ping pong table that was laden with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gifts and toys that we would help pack as soon as we were old enough to help my mom to bring to the children's hospital to deliver at Hanukkah and Christmas times, I learned from her and of course from my dad, who supplied us with all this stuff, give back. In Yiddish, it says, don't be a schnorrer, don't be a taker, give back in life. And the dangerous part of the job, I don't know if that was part of the ethic of my wanting to give back, but it was a need that the town had. They had a need for volunteer firemen. They had a need for volunteer ambulance corps workers. And there were times, because Chappaqua was a commuter town, and it was bereft of people during the day. They were all in the city at work. So we'd go to a house fire and have 3 people on the truck, not enough to fight a fire. So there was a tremendous need. So I think it was the need that did that, not the danger. Not that I didn't enjoy it, and not that I'm not an adrenaline junkie, but yeah, I needed to give back. I learned that from my parents.
Well, now, as a prosecutor in Brooklyn, was that your first job out of college, out of law school?
Yes, it was. Loved every minute of it. Tremendous learning experience, and I made some magnificent friends, and I learned everything from some of the classic people that whose names wouldn't be known to anybody who's alive today, I'm afraid. But there was a trial attorney, Benny Schmier. Benny Schmier was a classic attorney in the sense of the word, in court. A handkerchief in his pocket that was the size of a tablecloth that he would dramatically take out and flourish in front of the jury to wipe his brow, which didn't need wiping, things like that. And the kind of cases I had were terrific. I think I put 2 or 3 of them in the book, as I recall.
Well, now we're here with Judge Peter M. Leavitt, retired judge now living in Boynton Beach, Florida. He was a judge in New York State, a town judge, as well as Superior Court judge. And his book is From the Other Side of the Bench, and it's available on Amazon, as he said, also on the website From the Other Side of the Bench. It's a great book, and it gives a great perspective. And it's really written for laymen, isn't it, Judge, this book?
I tried that, yes. And several of my guinea pigs who read through the manuscripts have said, I understand it. You do go into the law, and you do explain things just enough for me to understand why you made the decision you did without getting too complicated. So I hope that's a good thing.
Yeah, the first job you had I was a prosecutor here in Virginia Beach for about 3.5 years, and I look back on it as just an incredibly great experience. I left because I wanted to make more money out on private practice, and after 3.5 years of it, you say, well, I think I've done everything I can do here. Not everything, but I'd tried cases all the way from DUI all the way up to murder. And once I'd done my share of the robberies and murder cases, I said, well, what more am I going to do here in this practice as a Commonwealth's attorney? So I think it's time for me to go start my own practice and hang out my shingle, which I did about 25 years ago. What was it that made you leave the Brooklyn DA's office after your 3 years?
2 daughters.
Ah, same reason, huh? More money.
Same reason. The sad thing is that government doesn't pay you enough to say, I'd like to stay and become a professional prosecutor, and yes, I can add things, and I can do this, that, the other thing. They just don't, and they can't. Benefit package was very good, but it wasn't enough to bring 2 children up in Chappaqua. So I moved from Brooklyn to Westchester because we wanted our kids to go to school in better schools and not do the private school route in New York City, and we wanted to have a nice home. And so I did what you did. I did my 3 years in Westchester to get to meet the judges and the lawyers and everyone else. Then I hung out my shingle and hoped for the best. That's what happens.
Well, but those were those days, and this is now. And I can tell you, and you may already know this, that now the compensation packages for the Commonwealth's attorneys and the district attorneys, certainly the Commonwealth attorneys that and live in our district here, are much better than they were then. And so when I left, it was pretty low paying. But now the amount of the package, when you consider what it consists of, now it's become much more of a career position, I think.
As a prosecutor, you mean?
Yes, as a prosecutor. You can make some money now as a prosecutor. Once you've got some seniority, they'll be making enough money to raise a family of a couple of kids, much better than they could have. And I was just talking with a colleague of mine just yesterday, and he was saying that he spent 8.5 years in the Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and I asked him the same question. Why'd you leave? He said, I had a couple of daughters. I needed to, a couple of kids, I should say, to support. So, but now it's the compensation packages are much higher. And you talk about that a little bit in your book, too, how the system is set up so that it's clogged up so that the offices can get more money for them. You talked about that a little bit in your book.
I did, but let me get into trouble with another group of people that
Right.
I already haven't insulted in my book. And let's talk about compensation for judges. In your equivalent court in Virginia, what do you think the salary is for a judge that would have been in my position?
Well, I think around $125,000 now. I think our judges are getting paid $125, maybe $150 now. I think for our circuit court judges.
Fair enough. In my job, and to the general public, this is going to sound like a tremendous amount of money, but it isn't. We were getting paid $133,000 gross, and that salary had been frozen for 12, perhaps 15 years, just frozen. With the amount of years experience that I had as a trial attorney, with the track record that I had, which isn't in the book, by the way, but I had a tremendously good track record with all the attorneys that I represented in private practice, I could probably have doubled or tripled that salary.
Right.
Which is why you don't attract better people to the bench. Sorry, judges, but you don't. So you have judges that either get elected because they want to have their retirement package, and sad to say that's true about many of the people that I knew in my own district, or you have people that are elected because they want the honorarium and because they haven't been successful in private practice, and $133K with benefits is good. So it's kind of a negative in my mind that if you want to attract better people, more qualified lawyers who have been in practice for perhaps 10 or 15 years, have an expertise, and want to get rid of our civil and criminal backlogs, pay them. Come up with a salary that would say, we want to attract you. You're not attracting those kind of people now, with the very few exceptions of those that have an enormous ego. So I included me in that package, of course.
Yeah, I think that we just elected a judge, not elected, but you see, ours are appointed by the legislature, and what we're seeing so often now is a lot of the new judges are coming up. They've been in private practice for a few years, and they've put some money aside, and they can afford to take that pay cut in order to be the judge for those last few years because they just flat are ready to do something like that. But they are in fact taking pay cuts to be judges. And it was very there's plenty of there's some anecdotal evidence of federal judges that have left the practice, and left a $160,000 a year job to go back out into private practice and make over $1 million as litigators in some of these big firms in D.C. area. So, yeah, you're right that when you've got some really high-powered guy that can run a litigation practice, he's taking a pay cut when he wants to become a judge. So it is a form of public service, really, I think, for many of our judges these days, if in fact because the money is not at what you would make if you were in private practice.
You are a paragraph ahead of me. The answer is it is a kind of a public service, and as I said earlier, I had been extremely fortunate in being in real estate when the boom hit, and had done so well that I could say after my 18-year run that, you know what, I love being a town judge. I mean, that was a great job. I had a lot of fun in town court, and you've read some of the anecdotes from my book about that. But I loved it and said, you know, I'd like to get out of this milieu and get back and give on a larger scale. And that's what I did. So it is kind of a public service, but it's not that we were paupers. Don't misunderstand. It's just that you're giving up being a rich person and saying, okay, I'm going to continue to make more money.
Well, what's it worth to you every day when you walk in and you walk into the grocery store and you see somebody and they call you judge? That's a priceless that's a priceless experience, isn't it?
I'll give you when it's priceless, and this happened to me at the Galleria shopping mall. When I walked in, I walked past the store. This young man walked out of the store. He saw me, walked out of the store, and he said, "Judge, thank you for taking a chance on me. I've gotten my GED, and I'm working at this store." That's priceless. And by the way, where the hell is the media when that kind of thing happens?
We're here with the Honorable Peter M. Leavitt. This is Justice for All, and I'm George Yates. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, we're going to ask Judge Leavitt to give us some of his priceless advice about what it's like to sit on the bench during a murder trial. We'll be right back.
If finances are holding you back from enrolling your kids or grandkids in private Christian schools, call the radio station at 488-1010. We have a partnership program with several schools on the peninsula and the south side that allows us to offer a 35% discount off tuition for preschool through the 12th grade. Give us a call today at 488-1010 or visit our website at tuitionsolution.org. Did we mention we added daycares to the site? tuitionsolution.org.
RM Designs T-shirt printing and more is located in Smithfield, but serves all of Hampton Roads. They specialize in vinyl designed shirts, apparel, window stickers, cups, and other specialty gifts. They also have rhinestone and embroidery designed apparel, and they offer Pandora-style beads and hardware to create a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. RM Designs T-shirt printing and more caters to businesses, sports teams, churches, groups, and family reunions. They also offer a great fundraising package should you be in need of money for a special project. And they also do home parties if you and your friends would like to get together and make your own creations. RM Designs T-shirt printing and more can be reached at 757-255-9140. That's 757-255-9140. Email them at rmdesigns11@aol.com or find them on Facebook at RM Twisted Designs. You can also place orders directly off their store at storeenvy.com/RM Twisted Designs.
What do you get when you cross a former prosecutor turned criminal defense attorney with radio? A variety show that is sure to spice up your Saturday afternoon. Tune in each Saturday at 2 p.m. for Justice for All. Each week, host George Yates will tackle current events, interview fascinating authors and guests, and offer advice on your legal issues. Visit ghylaw.com. That's ghylaw.com and click on the radio show button to listen online and to archives.
Okay, well, we're back on this beautiful sunny day. This is Justice for All, and I'm here with the Honorable Peter M. Leavitt, and his book is From the Other Side of the Bench. Judge, I'm asking you a question. Have you ever had to try a capital murder case and be in the position of having to preside over a death penalty type case?
Interesting, George. The answer to your question is no, but. And the but is this. There, in the 9th Judicial District, they had to make a selection of 5 of all of the judges in the district who were capable of trying capital murder cases. I was selected as one of the judges. During the term that I sat, the Honorable District Attorney Janine Pirro elected not to try a single capital murder case. So we didn't have any capital murder trials in Westchester County.
So
Wouldn't look forward to it if I had my druthers, but of course, I was trained to do it and would have done it. Went to school, took extra classes, and was trained in how to handle such a case.
yeah, so it's like we've seen very few capital murder cases prosecuted here in the last few years.
Correct.
It's I got capital murder certified years ago when it was this. And I ended up getting appointed a bunch of these cases. I never had to lose a client to the death penalty. It seemed like they always worked their way. I worked my way through that and ended up working out a guilty plea to something less, or tried the case without the death penalty on the table. And these days you're seeing fewer and fewer of those, which is a good thing. We've had Innocence Project people on the show, and my understanding is you're opposed to the death penalty. Is that right?
I don't know if I said that in the book, and I don't know if I can give you a definitive answer that I'm opposed to it. The problem that I have is what I'm opposed to is the system. I'm opposed to 20 years on death row. I'm opposed to the absurdity of some of the claims that are made. I'm reading in the newspapers now that the Supreme Court is going to review the latest execution claim by these people that are about to be executed, that it's going to cause them a lot of pain when they get their lethal injection. You know what, George? I wish they would have thought of that when they killed their victims. I wish they might have taken into effect that they were causing incredible suffering to the people that they murdered. So you know what? I really don't care about their being caused incredible pain. As a matter of fact, if I was sitting on the court, I would vote to say, kill them however you have to. And I'm really sorry we haven't brought back the guillotine. You have no mistakes then. And it's over real quick.
Well, it's true. And I think that we had a guest on this show a couple of weeks back, April Moore. She wrote this really interesting book called Folsom's 93. And she had this was a book about the 93 men that were executed at Folsom Prison between 1895 and 1937 before they instituted the gas chamber. Now, and they hung them on the gallows at Folsom Prison. And it seemed to me that just dropping somebody through a trap door and breaking their neck and killing them instantly seemed to be much more humane than gassing them, which they went to in 1937, or this lethal injection thing. I mean, if you're going to kill somebody, as they say, it seems sort of silly that we're worried about whether or not we're going to be putting them in pain. And as you say, the guillotine is a very, I mean, I've sort of become anti-death penalty for the main reason that we don't execute people summarily. You know, back in those days, if somebody was convicted, they were probably executed within several months. But now, by the time you get around executing somebody, it's 15 years later, they're a different person. We're killing somebody that's probably done some wonderful things, and they're a different person. And the whole process, as you say, makes the death penalty now seem to be kind of something we should put in the past.
We may be on the first path to you and I disagreeing about something, George, and let me tell you what it is. I don't care what you've done in prison. You take that Connecticut case with these two vicious fiends who killed the mother and the daughters, and tell me that, do I believe in the death penalty? I volunteer to be on the firing squad. It's not a question of their guilt or innocence. It's not a question of did they receive a fair trial, and you and I know that. You and I know how careful all the states are when they try these cases. There was a time that wasn't true. But I'm not opposed to the death penalty. I'm just opposed to what we're doing with it. I'm opposed to the absurdity of saying that I don't think that the great state of Virginia is capable of trying me in a capital case fairly and justly. I know George was my attorney, and it's pretty good, but I still got sentenced to death. Well, you know, I don't believe that, so let's go through the appellate courts. Let's go through every appellate court in the state. Let's go to the highest appellate court in Virginia. And they say, you know what, you had a fair trial, your constitutional rights were safeguarded, everything was good. we're not overturning your conviction. No, let's go past that now. George, that's where I begin to lose faith and confidence in our system. Why are we saying the states are not capable of making their own decisions in capital cases? Help me out.
Well, we've had people on our show. I think that we've had Innocence Project people on our show that have pointed to over 20 exonerations. Some of these folks that were convicted based on faulty eyewitness identification, no DNA, false or coerced confessions, and these people just flat didn't do it, and then years later they're exonerated with DNA. So that's the problem with it, is that because death is so final, there is a possibility that somebody is actually executed for a crime he didn't commit.
That is where I agree with you. I do agree mistakes have been made, and I do agree there should be a system to make sure that we don't make mistakes. But I don't agree that because you overcooked the roast that you should never make roast again, because you might do it again. I don't believe that we should just do away with a system that, in my mind, and of course it's the Judeo-Christian ethic that goes back a lot older than I am, an eye for an eye. You know what? There are some animals that commit horrible crimes. We know they did it. They've confessed to doing it, and they're put on the same plateau with the persons you're talking about, that the Innocence Project talks about, that I didn't do it. Fine. These are cases we should look into. But when you have a cold case, and you and I both know as former prosecutors, there are cold cases. Why are we wasting the time? Not to even mention the taxpayers' money.
Well, that's it. These death penalty cases are so expensive to try.
You know, it is interesting that you asked me this, because since I retired, I've become a professional lecturer. I became a law school professor at Pace Law School. I did that. I've lectured for the Bar Association down here in Florida, Palm Beach Community College, Florida Atlantic University, and hundreds of other private places. So that was a plug. Go to my website.
Go ahead. What's your website?
I lecture.
Is your website From the Other Side of the Bench, or do you have another website?
Either one, From the Other Side of the Bench or thejudgespeaks.com.
Okay, great.
And
you just got your plug in there.
Every lecture, I'm always asked about the death penalty, and it really comes down to mistakes that have been made. I believe that the Rosenbergs was a mistake. I believe it was a political decision at the time.
Ethel was definitely innocent. I had James Zirin on my show. We talked about the Rosenberg trial quite a bit, and Julius was guilty. Ethel was not.
You sound like me at one of my lectures. That's exactly right.
Right.
I couldn't agree more. And what was interesting for me as a personal note, I didn't mean to interrupt you, George. Had you finished?
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
When you're a sitting judge in a superior court in New York, you have an obligation to visit every form of prison to which you can send people. One year after, I think it was about my fifth year, I was appointed by the administrative judge to be the leader of setting it up and doing the visit. And I took all of the judges from the district to Sing Sing, Austin Correctional, where they were executed. And the deputy warden had gotten to know me, and we'd become a little friendly. And during the tour, he said, "We don't, as you know, Judge, we don't do this, but would you like to see the death chamber?" Well, how do you say no to that? So we all start trooping down this incredibly horrendous, narrow corridor, nothing but steel doors and brick walls and a low ceiling, and we're walking toward the steel door, and two of the judges looked at me and said, "We can't do it. Can't do it." And so a guard escorted them out of the prison, and we went to the steel door, and he opened the steel door, and he pointed to the right. There was a cell, and he said that was Ethel's, and he pointed to the left, and he said that was Julius's. And he opened the door, and it was an empty room. And he looked at me, and he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, Judge, old Sparky," their nickname for the electric chair, has been moved to another prison. So it's kind of one of these dramatic moments of life where you say, "Oh, my God." I'm glad I'm here, but I didn't have to hear that. You didn't have to leave the door closed. It would have suited my imagination better, and I would have written about it in a different way. So,
but you did try other murder trials, right? As a trial judge.
Yes, many murder cases.
Tell me the most, just for a little anecdotal, what was the most exciting or interesting murder case that you ever tried? Were there ever any acquittals?
Are you asking whether I tried it as a judge or as a witness in a murder case?
I know. I know that. Let's talk.
Well, I'll tell you as a judge.
Tell me. We'll do both because I know that's an interesting story. You being a witness with the credibility, which was really a funny story in your book. Tell us your most interesting murder trial that you tried as a trial judge, and then we'll talk about you as being a witness in a murder.
It has to be the Dobbs Ferry Deli murder case that I tried, and that was notorious in the tri-state area. Tremendous amount of publicity, press, television, radio. I think they even were beating the drums about the story. Horrible case. Young black man drives into one of these strip malls and parks in front of a delicatessen and gets out of his car. And there's a sign that says, patrons only. And the owner comes out and screams at him. This is not HBO, so I've got to be a little careful about my language. I am probably not allowed to use the actual words that we used.
It's okay. He used a racial epithet. Is that what happened?
Oh, did he ever? And screamed at him, and he looked at him very calmly and said, "I'm going across the street to buy a slice of pizza. I'll come back and buy a soda from your store."
This is what the black dude said to the
owner,
guy
right.
that was yelling at him. Okay.
Right. The owner is DiGuglielmo Sr., and he walks across the street, buys a piece of pizza, and the pizza guy said, "Uh-oh, look at your car." And DiGuglielmo is pasting one of those horrible paper stickers that covers your whole window, and it's hard to get off on this guy's car. So he runs back, and they start yelling at each other, and DiGuglielmo's brother comes out, and his son come out, and a fist fight starts, and the three of them are clobbering Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell's the victim. And the fight goes on, and they're beating him, and he breaks free, runs to his car, he gets an aluminum softball bat, and the witnesses, 28 witnesses that testified that he was in a defensive posture. He hadn't hit anyone. He was swinging at their legs. They were still attacking him
after he went to his car to get the bat. They continued to pursue him and try to attack him.
They were attacking him, and they wrestled his cell phone away and smashed it on his head. That was DiGuglielmo Sr. His son, who was a New York City cop, ran into the deli, grabbed the pistol, came out with no warning, bang, 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 shot and killed him. This is in a fight over a parking space.
Wow.
And the man is dead. His son, who I think he was 13 at the time, will not have a father, etc. But it was a horrible case. There were three young boys who testified at the trial, between 8 and 10 years of age, who had gotten out of school and were driving past the store behind where Campbell was. But for the grace of God, they would have been shot by this cop who shot and killed him. It was horribly racially blown up in the papers. Janine Pirro was accused of using the race card in the case. White cop killing a black guy. It was awful, and that to me, that was probably the most difficult case I had to try. When you walked into my courtroom, you could see the courtroom split in half. Behind the defendant's table, the three of them, with three attorneys, was a sea of white faces all the way to the back of the room. Behind the prosecutor's table was a sea of faces, all black, all the way to the back of the room. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. I had a conference that I conducted before the trial started because David Lewis, who was a diet doctor, that was where his fame came from, was one of the attorneys. I wanted to send the ground rules because when I watched the whatever part of the O.J. case I watched, I found there was something missing from that. Did you find there was something missing from that trial, George?
Yeah, the judge was completely out of control.
There was I was missing a judge.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm sorry, but
well, he was interested in his own celebrity, Judge Ito. That's what a joke that was.
The dream team would would jump up for some question, and they'd say, move for a mistrial. He'd say, all right, approach the bench. And there would be these 20 people would approach the bench, and he would say, step back. All right, it's Wednesday. We'll be adjourning to Monday while I contemplate my decision. George, what the hell was he getting paid for? I mean, you're a judge. You make a decision. You either but you do something. And never mind. I get past myself. So anyway, I am decided that I am going to be in charge of my courtroom, not David Lewis, who was notorious for taking over the courtroom. And I set the ground rules, and I told him how much time they would have to voir dire, and he objected, and I wasn't pleasant about it. I said, all right, Mr. Lewis, instead of 20 minutes, I've just cut your time to 1 minute, and that's according to the law of the state of New York. And he said, well, let's. And there's a knock on the door, big knock, which is very unusual. I was sitting there with 2 district attorneys, 3 defense attorneys, my principal law clerk, who I had never had sit with me during a trial, and a stenographer, my court clerk. And I say, who's there? And it's my sergeant. And as you know from my book, I have tremendous respect for the sergeants in the courthouse. That they run the place, they protect you, me, the public, etc. And I said, what's the matter? He said, Judge, I am so sorry. I apologize for interrupting you. But the Reverend Al Sharpton is out here, and he wants.
Oh my God!
He wants to meet with you before the trial starts. I can't actually tell you the exact words that I used, but it was something similar to tell the Reverend to go stuff himself. I don't meet with anybody before the trial, especially him. He walked out, the door closed, and everyone in that room applauded and said, Judge, so smart, no matter what you would have said in here, would not have been what was printed in the newspapers. So that's how my trial started, George.
Wow.
That was the beginning.
How long did it now? Apparently, this lawyer that you only gave 1 minute of voir dire to.
Well, I didn't. I backed off when he backed off, because he backed off to understand that Judge Leavitt controls the courtroom. So long as I play within the rules, I'll get a fair trial, and that's what I said to him.
And how long did it take to pick that jury?
That was about 5 days, which is very unusual.
Yeah, for something that's that highly publicized and highly charged, that's pretty good timing to get that 5 days. That's about right. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to characterize myself as a tough judge, but I didn't allow speeches. I didn't allow them to make an objection and then go on and on.
Right.
It's called running a tight ship because that's what my job was. My job was to get the job done. Find 12 good and reliable people and honest people and do your job.
Now, you had some good lawyers in that case, though. You said David, what's his name?
David Lewis and
fine
Patricia
lawyer.
Murphy, 2 of the better attorneys, and I think you know this is true, too. And I think the public should know this. Judges love good lawyers. We despise the ones that shouldn't be in our courtroom. We want to have better attorneys because they've done their homework, they've done their preparation, everything goes smoother, they've researched what the points of law are, and it was just a delight. It was an absolute pleasure.
What separates, what is your determinant, what does make a good lawyer in your view as opposed to the, let's say, the not-so-good lawyer?
Someone who's prepared for the trial, who's researched the points of law before the case starts, who doesn't have to say, can we have a half-hour recess while I look that up? I'll give you one example, and again, it'll be David Lewis. We're in about the 5th day of trial, and there's a detective on the stand, and I forgot what the question was that Patricia Murphy asked him, but David Lewis jumps up and says, motion for mistrial. I say, approach the bench, and he did, and there are all the attorneys there with my principal law clerk standing next to me, and he said, Your Honor, this is casebook law. People versus Cruz, 423, Texas Circuit, whatever, and it black letter law. At that time, for the first and only time, I said, we'll take a 5-minute recess. So we go back into chambers. Al has his computer. I say, I never heard of that case. He said, well, let me look it up. Then he looks it up, and I said, is it on point? He said, Judge, it's on all fours. It's absolutely on point. And he's absolutely right. This kind of a query would call for mistrial. It's highly prejudicial. I said, well, is it binding on me? He said, no, it's binding in Texas.
Right.
Now, what made it a good question? He did this from the top of his head. He had no paperwork in front of him. This man was brilliant. Probably still is. I hope he's still around. That's a prepared attorney. Not that he thought that it would grant the mistrial based on a Texas case, just a case he'd read that was exactly on point. That's a prepared attorney.
But if something is on point, even though it's from Texas, I mean, that is pretty. Isn't that? I understand that it wasn't a New York case, but if it was on all fours and you got and they granted the mistrial in Texas, why wouldn't you, as the judge, say, well, I mean, that is a very, it's on all fours, and I realize it's Texas. Maybe we don't have a case exactly like that in New York, a case of first impression. Why wouldn't you then rule in his favor? What was your reasoning in that case?
Well, I'm leaving out the other 4 minutes that that my principal law clerk spent looking up New York law. I'm leaving that out. And, of course, there is New York precedent on this particular point, if not exactly on all fours, close enough to say, no, that's not binding on me. But I would give it credibility. Of course I would, based on any jurisdiction. With the possible exception of Florida. Florida, I don't think I ever followed a case from Florida.
Well, there's so many districts in Florida, and they conflict with each other all the time. Oh, there must be 5 district courts there.
My problem,
I
George.
practiced law in Tampa for a while, and I swear the advance sheets, you could spend all week just reading the advance sheets from there's so many district courts there, and one would say one thing and one would say another. So, well, what happened? What was the verdict in this murder case, this highly racially charged violent murder case? What ended up happening? How would the jury rule in that?
I'll tell you about that. And I'm not insulting Florida. I'm excoriating the court system because you're right. They can't even talk to each other. But let me go back to the case. What was horrible for the jury was that the Reverend Sharpton showed up after I didn't meet with him with 50 of his followers conducting a prayer vigil outside my courtroom.
Oh, my gosh.
It got to be so overwhelmingly bad in the papers that I arranged for the jury to have separate parking because some of their cars had been keyed and they didn't feel safe. So they came in a separate entrance. They came into a parking area that was a secured area. So I managed to keep the jury out of harm's way as much as I possibly could. The jury deliberated on the assault charges against the father and the brother, and of course the son who shot Mr. Campbell. And I think it was 3 days later they came back, and I had a dozen different verdict sheets on the different charges: assault in first, et cetera, and murder in the second degree for the cop. When the sheets were handed to me, because I had gotten a note from the jury that the jury's reached a verdict, my sergeant came up to the bench, and this is where I admit some of my own frailty, and as you know, I admit lots of frailties in the book and things that I could have done better. And he said, "Judge, can I talk to you for a moment?" And I went to the sidebar with him, and he said, "Judge, I wouldn't take the verdict right now. This courtroom is bursting with all kinds of energy and all kinds of terrible things, and I'm not ready." So I handed the sheets back, went outside. He said, "I need an hour to an hour and a half to get you security." George, I'd never had that happen to me, but he
and you didn't know what the verdict was?
Didn't know at that time. He said, "I have to get the county police to make sure that busloads of rioters don't come up from New York City and start trouble. I've got to get the state police to monitor the highways as well. I've got to get the White Plains Police Department to cordon off the courthouse. I've got to get the town police to go to your house to guard your house. And I've got to arrange security for your courtroom and for you." George, there are things in life you don't want to hear. I really didn't want to hear any of that because once you hear it, you say, "Are you serious?" He said, "If I wasn't serious and we didn't have intelligence cautioning us about that and cautioning us about making sure we escorted every juror to their cars after the verdict is delivered, no matter what it is, I wouldn't be doing my job." It took well over an hour. It took the guard that he assigned to me that he was assigned, and he said, Mike, take care of the judge 36. I didn't know what that meant either, George. It meant that George wasn't to get more than 36 inches away from me. He took me to chambers. We walked over to the side of the building. He said, Judge, if you are concerned about the seriousness of this, take a look down there next to
Judge,
yeah.
We're going to have to go to a CBS News break right here, and I think that's great. We're going to make all our listeners have to wait until after the CBS News break to find out what happens. You've got us right on the edge.
Thank you, George.
So when we come back from the CBS News break here at the top of the hour, we're going to find out what happened in this very serious racially charged murder case from Westchester County, presided over by the Honorable Peter M. Leavitt. We're going to go to a news break, and we'll be right back with Justice for All. Hope you wait until we get back from the news break so you can hear what happened in this case. Bye.
Early today on a mission to transmit data that could help people do a better job of getting ready for droughts and floods. CBS News space correspondent Bill Harwood.
It's a critical mission for NASA. It's a $916 million mission to map the moisture in Earth's soil down the first couple of inches of soil around the planet. They're going to do this every 2 to 3 days with the long-range goal of being able to improve near-term forecasting.
Bobby Christina Brown, the daughter of the late singer Whitney Houston, was found unconscious in a bathtub at her Georgia home. She was revived after being rushed to a hospital. Roswell police officer Lisa Holland.
We are interviewing all the family members and friends that were at the house at the time, and there is an investigation, but that'll be determined later what caused this to happen. We don't know if it was an accident or what this could be. Houston, who had substance abuse issues, drowned in a bathtub in 2012. Now, here's a thing about the Super Bowl you probably didn't know you had to worry about.
Researcher Charles Stecker here at Tulane University in New Orleans found the home cities of the Super Bowl teams have more flu deaths.
It's more dangerous to have your team in the Super Bowl.
He says there's an 18% jump in flu deaths in the cities of the AFC and NFC champions, and those over 65 are at the highest risk. He blames a higher number of people at Super Bowl parties double dipping, spreading germs by touching food others eat, and not enough hand washing. Dave Cohen for CBS News, New Orleans.
There's a funeral today for the first African-American player for the Chicago Cubs, Ernie Banks. Cubs chairman Tom Ricketts.
I speak for all fans when I say, Ernie, thank you. We love you. We already miss you. And while we will always miss you dearly, we also know that on a bright, sunny afternoon at Wrigley, as the Cubs take the field, you will be right there with us.
Banks died last week. This is CBS News.
Loyalty can be hard to find these days. That's why at Advance Auto Parts, we've decided to reward your dedication with some loyalty of our own. Introducing Speed Perks, the most generous parts rewards program out there. For every $30 you spend, we'll give you $5 back on your next qualified purchase. No card to carry, no points to keep track of. And your rewards are good on everything in the store. Advance Auto Parts, let's get you back to the garage.
See store to sign up or visit speedperks.com for details.
If you've been looking for Pandora jewelry, look no further. You'll find it at Jared, the Galleria of Jewelry. Life has its moments. Make them unforgettable with Pandora charms, bracelets, and rings. Jared has an outstanding Pandora collection. And this Valentine's Day, only Jared has the new Pandora Sterling Silver and Pink Cubic Zirconia with Love Charm. The Sterling Silver and 14 Karat Gold Spread the Love Charm. And the Sterling Silver and 14 Karat Gold Cupid Dangle Charm. While supplies last, see store for details.
Earlier this week, oil prices dropped below $44 a barrel for the first time since 2009, but the drop in prices is affecting jobs in the energy industry.
With the U.S. rig count down significantly,
our expectation is that we've seen the early signs
of oil prices beginning to turn around. But Frostbank energy analyst Ted Harper says it's too soon to tell if this is indeed the bottom. And if the sell-off continues with so many of the nation's oil rigs idled, there's concern refineries could be next should oil prices stay low long enough. August Skamenka, CBS News, Houston.
In Moscow, thousands of rare documents have been destroyed in a fire that's been raging for more than 17 hours at one of Russia's largest public libraries. More than 200 firefighters have been trying to put out the blaze at the Institute for Scientific Information on Social Sciences, which holds 10 million documents and text. I'm Allison Keyes, CBS News.
There's a fire you get in your belly when you're working on your car. Nothing kills that feeling like a dead battery. Either way, the job's got to get done. Buy any new battery online at advanceautoparts.com and pick it up in store in just 30 minutes. Like a long-lasting Autocraft Gold battery, engineered with power frame technology. Job's done, and you can tackle your next big project. Advance Auto Parts. Let's get you back to the garage.
Visit advanceautoparts.com now to learn more.
As a retired teacher, I look for ways to save money for the things I love, like traveling the world. Medicare plans change each year. Fortunately, my Health Mart pharmacist helped me understand my insurance, saving me money on prescriptions. And they can help you too. My pharmacist cares about my health and the things I love, whatever that might be.
Health Mart, caring for you and about you. Visit healthmart.com for the locally owned pharmacy near you.